All right.
All right. Hi, everyone. Whether you're here with us live or you are watching the recorded version, thank you so much for joining us for this very special Shred-isode, if you would, where we are bringing the Shred event that we would typically have in person online. So this is a new format for us, but I'm really excited because we got some great content today for the gap between registered and ready. We'll start by introducing ourselves. My name is Lisa Shea Munt. I'm the co-founder with The Pulse. It's you,
Awesome.
Amber. Oh,
Oh, it's me. Hi, I'm Amber Hart. I'm also co-founder and co-owner of The Pulse.
I am Liz DiBiase. I am the small business partner advocate for ICF International.
Imogen Thomas, National Security Growth Lead with Aptive Resources.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, for those of you who haven't joined us at a shred before, I will jump in and sort of give the premise of the shred, I guess. The shred is an open discussion forum where we like to talk about things that are hard in GovCon. When you see my face at a shred, we're usually talking about something that's hard for a small business owner for obvious reasons, because that's what I like to talk about. But the ground rules are pretty simple. We've got several talking points prepared. If anybody has met the four of us, you know we don't really go anywhere without some talking points prepared. But please feel free to jump into the Q&A, jump into the chat, raise your hand, what have you. If you've got something to add or a tip or trick you'd like to share with everybody else on the phone, we'd love to hear it. If you want to drop it in the Q&A or drop a question in the Q&A, I will keep an eye on that as we're talking. But for those of you who are watching the recording, unfortunately, you cannot jump in that way. You can certainly try, but we won't be there in person. So unless major technology advancements have happened and there's some sort of robot Liz to read your question, you're going to have to hold that to the next episode.
honestly, shudder the thought.
Right, right. Robot Liz would be amazing, first of all. But today we are here to talk about the difference between registered and ready. And this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart because it's very near and dear to my work that I do today to advocate for small businesses as part of a large prime, and talk about what happens after you register in SAM. So my first talking point, I'll jump in and get us started, was focus. It's real easy to get registered in SAM. We were joking before the meeting started about all the different places on the internet you can find advice to start a government contractor and how a lot of it jumps right from get yourself registered in SAM and then go ahead and write this RFP. Like, let's jump on SAM and find this
Let's
RFP
win $1 million.
Let's win $1 million tonight. And I think most of us know that anything that's presented as that easy is fake. It's just not reality. So my first bullet point was focus. I've already lost the thread on that, which is super fun, but focusing on having a solution to a problem, knowing what you do. Any thoughts on that?
I want to jump in and actually put it down, flip it, and reverse it, and go even before the focus,
Ooh.
which is just you talk about registered versus ready. I can't, but thank you so much, Imogen, for reversing it for me. I really appreciate the visual. It's people, especially when they are starting in federal contracting, they don't know what this means. They, to your point, they see like, let's win $1 million tonight. Look at the market. The market is huge. The market is great. And, I just had a call with someone today that was like, yeah, they want to know the market then which they operate. And I was like, great. And they're like, yeah, but then, they started trying to jump in and they weren't even registered in SAM. And I was like, okay, now I'm wary because if you don't understand sort of the logistical steps that you need to take, do you actually understand the theoretical steps that are going to be imposed on you once you do get registered? So this idea of focus is important, and it also means understanding what federal contracting is and what it is not.
Ooh.
Can we talk
I
about the next book being the theoretical steps of government contracting?
I will. It's going to be rooted in like quantum theory and other
This is all.
So
Put your
Amber
book
is
down.
a freak right now picking up the book, which is BD 360, which does actually explain what the market is. And it's something that we actually just released this week. And what I love about Amber being home on the computer is she can be a prop comic today, which she would normally not be able to, one would assume. But this idea of knowing what it is, knowing what it
Don't
means,
assume I wouldn't bring the book around with me.
that's
Don't assume
fair.
I wouldn't bring her one.
No,
It is, and it's going to be a trade-off like anything else, right? To your point, it's yes, it is harder to do business in government than it is to do B2B in the commercial space. There are more reporting requirements, more infrastructure you need, absolutely more difficult to win against a more competitive landscape, a broader, a different problem set to tackle, more regulations. The other side of that being, and this is what some of the charlatans out there kind of give you when they're saying go win $1 million, is there's more transparency, right? Every dollar the federal government spends, unless you have a security clearance, is open to you. You know where it goes, you know why it's spent. You can get there if you dig hard enough or know where to look. But like Lisa said, you've got to have the infrastructure built up to start and know what you're getting into. So many micro businesses, small businesses, sole proprietorships fail very early and have their contracts canceled because they didn't know delivering janitorial services to Pax, River required clearances and required all of this reporting on labor hours and all this kind of stuff.
So
exactly.
what's your advice for someone who's just entering? How do they know that they know? How do you gauge what you don't know
Pool's
in
full.
that situation? What's that?
The pool's full. Go
The
home.
pool's full. That's why we're
No
making
new
such big
friends.
pushes to grow
Hashtag
the industrial
GovCon.
base because plenty of people in the market. Yes.
Yeah, I've worked with new entrants a lot. I know we all have, right? And the beginning is just go see an Apex Accelerator, go sit with somebody. But like anything else, most importantly, because we can't sit here, no matter how much time we have, and tell you everything that it takes to enter. But find a mentor, right? Like anything else you're going to do in life, if you want what somebody's got, do what they did. So go find somebody that succeeded in the thing you want to do and find out how they got there and build that mentorship relationship. Great place to just go and ask for please give me a subcontract in addition, right?
We're going to get to that particular phrase. Please give me subcontract. I think it's also, to your point about mentorship and Amber's point about books, because reading books is good, actually. Um, there are a lot of very good books. And the authors of those books, for the most part, have to promote those books themselves. And as you can see, and you'll find a lot of that on LinkedIn. And my suggestion is always that that's sort of the best place to vet your sources, is to go see who's responding to them, who's interacting with them, and how they're interacting. And for me, that helps me a lot to sort of say, okay, this is a person that's credible, right? Look for that hyperbole, throw it out the window.
I do want to talk about this idea of credibility and mentorship. And yeah, you have to attach yourself to somebody else's steed in some ways, but to be very careful about that. And this idea of vetting them, what you're going to find is that the people with the broadest reach more often than not have the most myopic viewpoint on the market. And that can work if you're in the same lane as them. But selling to the government, let's get back to Liz's main point, which is focus. A lot of times market entrants will say, well, my customer is the government. And we say, my sweet summer child, it most certainly is not the government, big G. There is something more nuanced than that. You have to find a specific agency. You have to find a specific office. It's so dependent on what it is that you're selling, but people don't realize the breadth. And that's why focus is so important.
I would agree with that. I guess, Amber, my question for you, as someone who does this a lot with small businesses, would be when you're in that mindset that your customer is big F federal, big G government, just writ large, right? I'm gonna
Big
help.
letters.
Here's
Yeah.
my shovel. How do you narrow that down? What's the first step? The first and easiest, they don't have Amber, they just have themselves step.
Well, just having themselves is actually how a lot of micro businesses start. because to work with the federal government and in almost any space, right, you need past performance, you need experience. And I would say 9 times out of 10, what we experience is that business owner being the one to put themselves on contract, right? Mm-hmm. So you typically bill yourself out as a 1099 or as a subcontractor to a particular skill set that you have. Now, it may not be the type of company or federal contracting organization that you want to create or that you want to have, but you need to make money somehow, one, and two, you need to make past performance. And so we have a lot of people that do that. So what I would say the first part is try to get yourself on, if you don't come in with a already kind of a capital, right, to start up with, or some type of pot of money to get yourself a recruiter, right? Everyone always says when you go into business, you need a lawyer and you need an accountant. I would say if you go into federal contracting, you need a lawyer, you need an accountant, and you need a recruiter. And those are the three things that you really need in order to start with, because end of the day, hate to tell everyone, but you are putting a person on a contract. Therefore, government contracting is staffing at its very minimal basic
level.
Maybe
I might be just putting some computers on a contract.
Maybe
I might be sending some pencils for a contract.
You might be, but someone has to bring those pencils, and someone has to.
But that's that I think sort of speaks to the focus, right? Are you sending
Absolutely?
people?
Are you delivering
pencils?
materials? Yeah. Or are you bringing in people, right? And if it's materials, you got to make sure you have those materials.
And that you know people, how the government buys those materials.
Exactly. And then if you have people, you got to make sure you have the people and know how the government buys those people. So that is kind of the way to can maintain those focus, but also bringing in and being able to put yourself on contract to start building up that experience or selling those pencils, right?
Well, experience is a great dovetail into my next bullet point, which was past performance and building past performance. And we've all read BD 360, so we all understand the very subtle difference between experience and past performance. But it is critical for a small business to build that past performance and build it quickly. I know I have coached several small business owners, even recently, on ways to leverage some of their own experience in ways they hadn't really been paying attention to. It's a challenge. You know, you come in as a brand new small business owner into the federal space, and you want to talk to a large prime about a subcontract because you went to the Apex Accelerator and they told you that the way to enter this market was to do it as a subcontractor. So you called Lockheed Martin because that's whose number they gave you. And the very first question they asked was, what is your federal past performance? So what are some ways that small business owners or even founders, right? So maybe not the primary owner, but founders, key personnel, if you will. That's an important term that may come up later. What are some ways that they can leverage past performance or build that past performance quickly to become credible in that market, or show credibility they already have, rather? Go ahead, Imogen, sorry.
I think that there's almost a step before that, but it dovetails, right? It goes in, and every contracting officer to get their what's called a FAC 3, right, in order to get their highest level warrant, has to go through a program of training, and they all get taught a thing called Lean Startup, right? And they go through that class, they understand it. If you go and read about Lean Startup, it's a great place to begin. Don't go trying to solve a problem that you haven't experienced, right? What we're doing here is we're solving problems, and we can get to problems later. But the idea is do what you know. Start there, begin there, because you've been at it, you've done it before, you've tried to solve that problem elsewhere, or you've just been someone on the user side that tries to do it and found somebody with the experience to do it themselves. From there, it's about finding the people that are experiencing that problem and how they buy. So when it comes to past performance and building that up, I'm sure Amber or Lisa will talk about the perfectly rightly, founders get to use their personal experience for a certain number of years as past performance on their contracts, 1,000%. That's the reality. The other side is when you're doing a lean startup and you're building a prototype and you're building an MVP, right? And you're saying, okay, I've got the idea, and now I'm going to go out and test if my solution is actually going to be right. I don't suggest that you do that testing at the Pentagon, right? That's not a first step, nor is HUD, to be honest, right? Nowhere really is. Go out and find a commercial place to do it. Go out and find some place that's like a spot test on your carpet for the cleaner, and try a place to make sure that works. That parlays into past performance. The true regulations on the evaluation of past performance and solicitation are wildly broad. Unless a contracting officer specifically says we need agency CPAR specific federal funding, then it's broad and open. And if you write in, if you see one of those in a solicitation and say, hey, I've got this other stuff, you should let me in. You should let me bid on this to see what I can do. Then why not, right? But always start small and start outside.
Imogen, that's a really good point, and it is something that people ask a lot. They're like, well, does it have to be federal? And it's like, well, it depends. And that's going to be the answer to pretty much 99% of everything that we say, right? It depends. Does the solicitation stipulate that it has to be federal? Can we use corporate experience or personnel experience or state and local experience? Maybe, it depends. And just knowing how to leverage that and how to integrate it into your response is part of the art of this. And then also something that we're seeing more and more, actually, I don't even know if this is a trend where before it wasn't this way, but past performance is typically rated neutral, even if you don't have past performance. So it's not to say that you absolutely need solid past performance to get into it, but it's absolutely best practice to have it, right?
Certainly, I would also point out large prime contractors don't have neutral ratings, nor do they have the option to take a neutral rating in most RFPs. A large business doesn't have that same luxury, though many of them believe that they do. I wanted to just dovetail on what both of you were saying and point out one of the things Imogen talked about, which is finding those opportunities to do things outside of the government and reminding people that community organizations, not-for-profits, and volunteer organizations always need help. And it is a phenomenal way to build past performance. Imogen and I actually did that as business owners with several local not-for-profits, did some program management for them. To do that.
We did. And we've seen, what's in your community, what's the big or mid-tier business in your community that you're going to be able to solve a problem for them. Everybody outsources today. The McKinsey model exists, right? And you can find that staffing experience and that kind of stuff. There is a company that built themselves from the ground up, from local to national, as a consultancy on the IT side. And they had some medium level business to business past performance, had never touched the government before, walked in and won a $180 million contract in their very first shot at bidding for anything in the federal government. And now if you have ever used E-Verify, that's the system they built for us, right? I mean, this happens all over the place. It happens all the time.
We want it to happen. Those of us who are government service delivery enthusiasts would love to see that happen. New blood brings new innovation, right? What was I saying this morning? Grab a shovel. There's a lot to do. But we actually have a question that I do think fits well in this part of our program as we talk about past performance. Where the rubber meets the road is obviously in delivery, but where we start putting the rubber on the tires is in the proposal process. And writing those past performance examples can be some of the toughest things that we do. I know for me, I have to make Imogen write resumes for me all the time. As a professional resume writer, it's how Amber and I met. Fun fact. And I can't write my own resume if you paid me money. Trust me, ask ICF. They do pay me money, and I still struggle to write my own resume. But with that said, past performance can often feel like writing a resume about your company. Many people are turning to AI to do that these days. I have an intern named Mike, who is actually Microsoft Copilot. And Mike and I have been working on lots of ways we can write things together, but without looking for a magic bullet. When we're talking about responding to RFIs, responding to proposals, writing past performance, and leveraging AI, and sort of increasing that number of responses without decreasing the quality and without sacrificing PWIN or strategy, just to make sure we're doing a triple sow cow here. Any tips, tricks, tools you've run into?
For writing past performance references?
Yeah, or proposals in general.
Proposals, I think, yeah.
Just proposals in general. I mean, I guess I would just say we're not reinventing the wheel here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder. I think that so many people, you talk about this idea of a silver bullet, and they're like, we have something new. And it's like, some of the foundations work just fine. If you're writing a technical approach, you are writing your understanding, the approach, and your experience in each and every sub factor. Your approach is typically made up of people, processes, and tools. Answer the questions. When you're talking about past performance, you're talking about size, scope, and complexity. And so if you can at least get the baseline there and then spend the time making it sing and making it compelling, like Amber can make any past performance read to be relevant to any other opportunity, because there is art in that. And the computer man, the big robots, big AI can't necessarily replicate that art, that artistry, but they can definitely get the baseline down.
And Liz, if I could just point out here, right, where we're talking about quantity over quality, right? Bidding on federal contracts is not statistically friendly. We actually dealt with a client that tried to do this and play the numbers game last fiscal year and brought us in late and said, well, we did this math and decided that if we bid on this many, our outcome will be this percentage of wins and this percentage of revenue. And I said, that's not how this works, because the games of percentages and statistics does not work in federal contracting, because at the end of the day, the person making those source selection decisions are people, right? A robot.
It's not a random force. It's an actual human.
A robot person may be helping them kind of dig through the 100 that they got submitted. But at the end of the day, a person, a human, is making that decision based on things that are based on qualitative and quantitative metrics and evaluation criteria, but also biases and unknown biases. And you can't play statistics with that. So, if the question is about how do you increase quantity while not hurting quality, I would ask you to take a look at that and figure out why you think that numbers game is going to be in your favor.
So I would agree. I like to use the baseball statistics analogy for government contracting. If you're hitting the ball 30% of the time, you're doing a great job. In Hall of Fame status, in fact. Congrats.
You could win one and it could change your entire business, or it could take your whole business down, right? Like
we're gonna get there. But I think for me, the question then becomes, what is the force multiplier I can use? If I'm not playing the numbers game, if I'm not saying if I turn in, I'm not doing the inside sales, 80 calls, 120 minutes of call time, I'm going to hit my quota formula. What is the force multiplier I could use if I were a small business? Would you say, Lisa, to your point, craft those really basic skeletons, have them ready in advance? Don't start from a blank page.
I definitely think that's the case. I think knowing who you are and what about you is persuasive. And I think that that's the force multiplier. Not to nerd about it, but I am getting my PhD in writing and rhetoric. Do we want to talk about the...
if you say pathos, ethos, or what, if you say that again, I'm going to...
I'm gonna hear
She's going to say something like didactic. It's coming.
Aristotle loves federal contracting.
Foundations, but it is, because why does anybody do anything? People are like, well, why did
how to ball? She knows Aristotle. Sorry.
Thank you, T Swift.
Thank you, Taylor
It's
Swift.
true. It's true, because I don't know how to ball, but the football, everyone's like sports, and I'm like, yay. But anyway, no, it's people are like, well, why did that person get chosen? Or why did that application get picked? I don't know. Why do any of us choose anything? Why does any of us have preference? What moves us as people? We talk about this idea of being fundamentally human and making decisions based on that. So yeah, it's emotions, logics, and ethics. So logic, do they know what they're talking about? Check. Emotion, does it make me feel a sort of way? It doesn't have to be happy. It doesn't have to be like moved. Sometimes it can be angry. Anger is like a really powerful emotion. Sometimes it can make you laugh. That's an emotion too, an emotional response. And then your ethics. Are you credible? Where have you done it before? The government is really risk adverse. So if we're showing that this is going to be a low risk solution, we've done it before. Oh, and here's how. That's what you work on. So get the baseline together. The stuff that people are calling boilerplate, the stuff that, AI is fairly good at putting together. You can ask it, like, what is my solution here based on the people, processes, and tools that my company has? Here it is. But then it's that extra stuff. That's the
like
force
making sure that
multiplier.
solution is something that's workable and something that you can do and you're capable of doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's only
It's
one
some-
way to do that. That part where you're making it actually workable. And here's, I think, the part that a lot of small businesses miss. They spend a lot of time letting perfect be the enemy of good enough, trying to persuade somebody who's never going to read their proposal, ever. Nobody's reading your proposal. Nobody's reading your proposal. Nobody's reading your proposal. I can't say that enough, right? They're going to sit there and they're going to skim it. They are so tired of reading proposals. They are so tired. They have whole other jobs. So certainly that's a factor, right? To me, what matters? Here is my cost volume. I'm starting there, right? I'm building out how I'm going to price this thing, and I'm backing into my solution. How many people does it take? How long does it take? What are their qualifications? And all my technical proposal is a justification of the cost, because that's what they're reading. That how much are you going to charge me for this thing, and is it worth it? So I start there.
It sounds to me like the force multiplier here really is preparation. I think AI tools are wonderful. I mentioned my buddy Mike and the easy button that Mike gives me. I use Mike for things that are less high pressure than proposals, though we have an internal AI tool that helps us get to pink team very quickly now. But I will point out, it gets us to pink team. It gets us away from a blank page. I will also put the caution on anyone who's using a commercial AI tool to generate your proposals that if you're not using a private instance of that commercial AI tool and that large language model, you are putting your solution out into the ether for everyone else. If you want to have a good time, go type what is Deloitte's blank delivery methodology for the federal government into ChatGPT. You're going to be shocked by the level of detail that replies to you that you get in the reply there.
How many of our solutions are really unique, though?
Are really what? I missed it.
Unique in any way.
I don't know how much of our
I mean, the
past
nice thing about
performance is
being us,
deep.
we've seen all of us hundreds of companies' technical proposals and their secret sauce, and the thing they do that's special, and it's branding is the secret sauce.
Yeah, right. I don't want to give that to
Right?
anybody.
But
yeah, that's the part I work hard on.
Come up with
Then
a
we put it on
fun
our
name
website.
for your process, a fun
Right.
name. And they love that.
Rapid
makes it
response
fun.
as a service, if you will.
your secret sauce is your wrap rate.
Yeah, that is true. Don't put your bracing into the large language model if you take nothing else away from this
Don't do
webinar.
No, that's fair though. I think a lot of times people are like, we have a solutioning problem, and it's like, no, you have a marketing problem. And
Yep.
a lot of government contractors, period, point blank, don't have a BD problem. They have a marketing problem. And although I don't believe in like the ultimate conflation between business development, federal sales, and marketing, because there are different components to each, they are intricately connected because this idea of ethics and building credibility, why does Leidos have iHeartMedia ads? Why do you see Peraton and what's it called, GDIT?
Metro Station?
Yeah, the metro station. And when you're coming into
I went to the airport today, big GDIT sign. And I'm like, do they even do federal contracting anymore?
Oh, if you were at Dulles Airport, you would
That's where I was.
also pass by on your way out of Dulles Airport a picture of ICF's founder, Colonel Lucky Lester.
And none of these
That's not an ad though. His picture lives there all the time.
None of these systems integrators are doing this for their health, right? Like there is a reason for it. And it's because people are more prone, Amber talked about biases, to choose the people that they know and trust. And you can't trust somebody until you know who they are.
I mean,
and
how often are our projects, Lisa, now turning into marketing projects?
Exactly.
They are rolling right into marketing projects each and every time at this point. And it's because there's a big language gap in understanding how they're selling and how market research is done, right? And understanding that brings you all back to focus, making sure all of your materials, everything that you're selling, how you're presenting yourself, down to your pricing, right? Pricing actually shows someone that you understand not only the marketplace and what you're doing, but understanding the federal marketplace, right? And that pricing is different.
Yeah.
If you are chasing opportunities, the government is already contracting, that it's a follow-on. If it's a need they're already solving, then you're not doing business development. You're
Mm.
doing sales. It may be doing sales. You're just proposing stuff. At that
Capturing
point, most
for
often.
sure.
Hopefully.
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 Well, if you're doing an incumbent takeaway, you're probably not going to win without doing any capture. I'm going on record. Put it on the transcript. Liz said it.
That's a hot take right there.
It's a hot take. Very controversial. Capture is important.
Or is it the pricing?
Well, I would. Okay. Now we're getting into semantics. So I think that puts a good bow on the focus. We've given a lot of dues. I wanted to put a bow on focus with just maybe it's the fifth bow. I haven't been counting bows for this shred, though I usually do. But for focus, the bow I wanted to put on here, we've given a lot of dues. I wanted to give one quick don't as someone who is the receiver of lots of cold calls from small businesses looking to enter the federal market. As you market yourself, and we've talked about this a lot, please do not lose sight of your value. But in particular, as you market yourself to specific customers, specific partners, potential competitors, don't lose sight of your value in that specific context. There is nothing more frustrating for people who are moving 1,000,000 miles an hour, solving 18 different very complex problems than someone who just comes and spits something, no context at them, that like they know could fix something, but also there's no context happening in their brain. They're between their 700th meeting of the day, and probably haven't had any coffee. So understanding your value helps you articulate that value. I use a joke from Underworld all the time in my job, which is neither vampire nor Lycan. It's a hybrid stronger than both. That's how I coach people to build teams. It's a hybrid stronger than both. And so if you keep that in mind as you're talking to larger primes and articulating to them the value that the team brings, not just you, not just them, but everyone, holistically, then you're hello, little xenomorph. I saw you in the gym. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. The Italian's coming out. But what you're doing is creating a team that can flex, that can be agile, that can flex around any sort of acquisition strategy hurdles or obstacles that get thrown at it. Because you can put the small on top, you can put the large on top. Everybody could be side by side. You could have a joint venture, you could have a CTA. Who cares? At the end of the day, this is the value this team can provide.
Which, Liz, to bow your bow's bow.
6 bows.
To bow the bow's bows, though, I mean, really the underpinning to the whole section is to come at it with knowing who you are and why you're there. Right. And it's who you are and why you're there when you're going to the large business prime, recognizing that you're not asking for something, you're telling them what the solution is, not like identifying the problem. It's as if, even on the commercial side, when we work with people and they're like, hey, we think that there's like some room for collaboration. I go, okay, cool. How? If you've thought about it, show me that you've thought about it. Show me that you have a solution. Don't make me do the work. The same thing for people that are evaluating proposals, that are just skimming it, that are scoring it. Don't make them do the work to know what value you bring.
Yeah. On the network side, on that piece, and I just came up, Lisa, because of what you said, kind of probably different topic, right? But overall, the value that you show. And when I'm working, and I do a lot of teaming, it's most of my job, right? I've always got to say that. And I was in a meeting yesterday over a nice lunch in Alexandria, looking over the river, and the conversation came out, and one of my senior delivery people was like, you know what? I see a lot of places for us to collaborate in the future. And what he meant was, I see that you have customers that I'd like to have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
I see something that I want.
We lost
that's
one.
on your plate right there. Can I
yeah, jump on in.
Yeah. But that's important, because to build the kind of teams that Liz is talking about requires that space, right? Requires that, and there are too many just in the DC area, right? It's unbelievable how many government contractors exist within 10 miles of the Beltway, right? It's uncountable. I've been doing this for many, many years. I don't know a 20th of any of them, right? And at the same time, I'm called to say, so who do we team with here? Who do I go with here? What's the strategy for this? And I'm going to go with the people I know, right? The individuals I know. And when I say I know, I'm going to go with the ones that I know that are consistent, that will show up every time, that will put the work in, put skin in the game, that will collaborate effectively and compromise where needed, and that won't make me look stupid to my customer. Right? And it's really easy to tell what that is. So when we're marketing and networking in the GovCon space, to me at least, that's 90% of the job, is demonstrating to the rest of the community in the GovCon space, especially mid-tiers and smalls, that you are that person, that you're ready to show up. There's a client that Liz and I worked for a long time that used to be a teaming partner way back in the day. And we had an end stage push for a proposal that this guy maybe had 7% work share on, almost nothing, but we were in trouble. Our solution fell apart with an amendment. We had to redo everything. My boss was out of town. I was young in the business and I was writing the thing on my own. This man showed up driving down from the Northeast, sat at a table in a three-piece suit and wrote for an entire weekend
He
nonstop.
didn't get up for 36 hours.
Never moved. And here we are, what are we now? 13 years later, 14 years later. And my first answer when anyone asks about the capability set he solves, what he delivers, and who should we team with, that guy. Period. That guy. Just that guy.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
I actually give a similar answer, but would discourage that kind of proposal heroics. If you've got a prime contractor asking you to do that kind of heroics, think real hard about whether or not that's somebody you want to be stuck with for the next 15 years, because you
Protect
will
your peace.
Yeah.
To protect your peace, but know that
in
this is a
proposals,
volatile.
it's hard to do that. And I will say, you know, that type of transparency is such a breath of fresh air where this is business, right? At the end of the day, coming to the table and saying, I want to try something on your plate. Do you want something on mine? Let's work something out, is way more efficient than trying to do the whole like synergy collaboration game, right? Where you're walking around it. If someone's got something that you want and you got something that they need, make a deal.
Put it out there.
Right? It doesn't matter if you're large, small, whatever. If you want it and you got it and they want, you know, go ahead, come to the table.
You know, to your point, Amber, I obviously do a lot of teaming as well. Big part of my job is meeting with small business owners who'd like to team. And I will tell you, the most impressive meetings I have that turn into the most opportunity for those small businesses tend to be the small business owners that approach it with that mindset. Here are the things I have that, looking at your portfolio, you need. I had a small business owner this summer arrive with a deck full of, here are all the people I can introduce you to, and here's all the people we'd like you to introduce us to. And it was such a breath of fresh air for my teams that they're still having meetings with this. I mean, it's turned into a ton of opportunity.
That's what's needed in this industry to be effective and to grow either way. This is no longer an industry of, you know, if you want to go ahead and go on the golf course, whatever, have cigars, go to lunch, do all the fun stuff, right? But in order to get something done, there needs to be an honest broker, right, between that and someone that's going to say, here's the plan and here's the trade-off, right? And this industry is consistently consolidating itself. It's consistently eating itself. Everyone is always looking for ways, you know, we're now like on this lunch thing, now I'm hungry. But everyone is looking for ways to grow because it's getting harder. It's harder to grow. And if you can bring a way for someone to do that in a creative way that they haven't thought of, one, that saves them money because they don't have to pay us to think of a way to do it for them. And two, you're giving them a strategy that they can go back to their boss with, right? That maybe gives them something new to think about that can be executed. And that's what's needed today in this industry, is that type of collaboration, if you will, where it's, here's how you can grow, here's our creative ideas, let's run with it.
One more slightly different tack on the exact same thing. I think we're way off topic maybe, but when you move this into your customer space, how do you do it not just with the community, right? I think the most effective business development tactic I've ever used, especially in the small space, is to say, maybe I have one customer, just one customer. That customer works in a bigger environment. There are lots of needs. And every conversation, I'm going to say, I do pencil sales or I do administrative support. What else are you looking for? And how can I introduce you to somebody in my network that is going to bring that to your table? Here is an AI developer, right? Or here is a race car driver, whatever it is they need. And always be ready to go out and seek in your network to bring that solution to your customer. And that way you're killing all those birds at the same time.
And saying no is your best business tool. Saying no.
Your no's protect your yeses.
You do.
That's cute.
So I actually think that's a great dovetail into our sort of second discussion point here. The first one was very heavy loaded. You can tell because we're 40 minutes in. We are running shockingly on time for a shred. We've actually made it to our second discussion point. High five, panel. But the next thing I want to talk about is that readiness, that scaling capital and strategy. And Amber teased us with this a little bit. Be sure you can deliver what you are promising you can deliver. But it does pose some challenges. We've all seen a small business win $100 million contract and then no longer exist, which feels like the most counterintuitive thing, but happens all the time. What are some ways small business owners can prepare themselves for that level of scaling and the challenge in this space?
I know I look
money,
at the crab with
you
pincers,
you
but
need to know, you need to understand the government's payment schedule, right? And if you can't support a payroll that size for 3 to 4 months without getting paid, you should not be bidding on the work. You need to be prepared for that prior to even submitting that proposal. That is not something that you prepare for after you, where it's like, we'll figure it out if we win. No. If you're going to submit on something that's scalable, that's going to be that game changing for your company, you need to go into that being able to say positively, you can pay that payroll for 3 to 4 months without any other money coming in. And if you can't, pull that bid, pull it immediately.
you need to have a relationship with your bank, your lender, your whatever it is that has that line of credit. You have to understand what sort of debt covenants you might have with that bank. I mean, there's, yes, to support what Amber's saying. You need to be able to enact on it too. And that's why you can't lie in these proposals too, right? Because you have to deliver it. So if you say that you have 135 linguists at the ready, guess who's going to have to put them on these contracts as soon as contract award hits?
We know
right?
someone that got cure notice for that a while ago.
You can pay people all day long too, though. But I can't describe to you how hard it is to work at a 200-person company running on a 5-person company infrastructure. And that when I say that it's difficult to work, I mean Glassdoor is forever, and we talk to each other, and hiring will get real hard, real fast with that employee experience. So certainly have that ability to scale. Look at the other companies of size and the kind of systems they have in place, the kind of work cultures they're able to afford their employees. And look to your large subcontractors. If you really think that you want to move from 5 to 200, please don't, then think about that pencil. Think about year one. Hey, large that's behind me, can you staff 80% of this year one? Can I ramp my people on as I get to know? Can I look at a mentor-protege agreement once we do this, when we start to use some of your systems, right? Beg, borrow, and steal for it. Don't be afraid of the growth, definitely, but be realistic and don't get like greedy in that first year.
But here's the other thing, though, too. If you do scale, then you have to have growth projections at a percentage of that as you go. So it's not just like, you did it.
Right.
The math has to math, right?
Yeah, the math got to math. And then you have to have in your pipeline to sustain that existing growth. Because guess what? 5-year contracts, 5 years will go by like that. And then if
it will get just pulled out from underneath you one day, it might just get canceled.
I actually promise you that that's true. I just got an email kicking off the capture for an opportunity that I helped win in the last cycle and had that moment of like, oh God, it can't be time for that again.
You're like, I did this already. That's
right. I already did this.
You might get doged.
Might get doged.
Don't get doged. But you know what I mean?
So like my addition to this, Liz has an addition to this. Okay. Is to know when to pivot. Speaking of, you might get dosed. Understanding your pivot points and understanding the places where you can pivot to, should those things happen, becomes critical in this rapid scaling environment. I have seen, look at you with your backgrounds. Um,
I want
um,
that.
as you're scaling your business, to Lisa's point, your scaling isn't forever, but it's kind of forever. Understanding those trigger events that would cause you to pivot, and then what your exit strategy is should you need to. There are great mid-tier businesses that started out as small businesses that do completely different things now than they did when they started, because those business owners have those good pivot plans. Another great point I heard, as just to wrap up this topic, because I think we gave a ton of really good information here. It was real dense. Another great point I heard was have a relationship with your banker before you need one. So in the grand total of things we need as a small business owner, we now have a lawyer, a CPA, a banker, and a recruiter on my list. So that's your big four. Probably, I'm going to say you probably are going to want somebody to talk to about insurance as well, especially if you're working
Your lawyer can
anywhere
help you
near
out with that.
cyber, AEC, or anybody who needs any sort of surety bonding to do your business with the government. Um, and then, of course, as you're networking and working with your large primes, leveraging those relationships with large and mid-tier primes to use that as a learning opportunity. We do a ton of mentorship here at ICF. It's a core value to our small business program that we're going to, when asked, reach out our hand and help, whether it's one-on-one coaching or some other training opportunities we can do. Most large primes will do the same. If you have an established relationship with us, it is in our best interest to help you succeed. Within reason. Still capitalism. Though. So that brings me to topic 3 with 15 minutes left and a gold star for all the panelists today. Please give me a prime contract. How do I know I'm ready for prime time? That's the pun I put in the notes for everyone that no one commented on. So I'm going to say it out loud.
I like it.
How do I know when I'm ready for prime time?
You're always ready for prime time.
Make that a chapter next time, Lisa. We're gonna make prime time a chapter.
Checks in the mail, Imogen. It's actually not in the mail because you're right over there.
What do we mean by prime? And that's the hard part, right? Because
yeah,
priming a SIBR, right, is a different thing. I know some of my favorite small businesses started as a sole proprietorship with the sole owner working on the one project for DARPA in their basement that they worked on. They started being ready for prime. Are you ready to prime a massive contract with a bunch of subcontractors? Now that's the question, right? Because priming with your own company is one story. The subcontractor relationship is what can really sink you, because those folks can step in between you and your customer when things go wrong. Those folks can ruin your reputation around the land, right, and make things difficult. And also, there's a lot of regulations in how you pay your subcontractors and how you work with them. So it's another tier of infrastructure to say, here is how I'm going to go about, people, process, and technology. Here's how I'm going to work with subcontractors. And prime a 5-person contract, it's easier, for me at least, than subbing.
I will say, Imogen, like, you come at it from an interesting perspective, though, where you and Liz are natural project managers, though. I will say a lot of people are not willing and ready to prime if they don't have that project management hat on and that lens. So it's like you're ready to maybe prime when you want to take on all of the administrative burden and you have the ability to do that, and you're doing the billing and invoicing in a way that you are legally supposed to do. So
you
that's
won't get paid if your invoice is
Lisa's
wrong.
talking from experience, where she doesn't want us to prime things due to this capacity.
Yeah, it would be a pain in the butt. Like,
absolutely.
We are technically a registered federal contractor, and it's like, yeah, I would love to sub. I would love to be the expertise. Yeah, make it so I don't have to do that. I love that. I don't want to take responsibility for the overall contract performance. I want to do my component. But when you feel like you're actually ready and able to manage it soup to nuts, that's another layer of prime readiness.
Yeah, I agree.
would say to add on to that is kind of also deciding what type of business you want to establish, right? Where if it's a lifestyle company, maybe a 5-person prime contract that just kind of continues on is something that is sustainable, something that you could do, right? And it's a lifestyle company? Or do you want to grow? Do you want to create an actual LLC? Do you want to support actual mission problems? Do you want to support and be in the trenches daily, right? Where that's also a decision on what type of prime you want to focus on. If you're the person working on a DARPA project in your basement, right? You might be looking just to solve those types of problems, and then you are ready to prime, right? As was pointed out. But if you want to solve other missions, if you want to really dip, your feet and go all in, well, that type of prime readiness is different when you decide what type of company you want to be. Are you supporting a lifestyle and you just want to kind of roll off whenever? Or do you want to create something that maybe, you can walk away from, but it's going to be self-sustaining?
I'm not hearing whether I should prime or sub. I'm hearing what are my rates, right? Because if I'm not a built-in project manager and I don't want to do that, then I'm going to figure out how much it costs to hire it or to outsource it and build that in my wrap rates. And if I can be competitive with a customer that wants me bad enough, if I can get a sole source or find something off the wire that works that way, then don't turn it down just because it's not ready. Then you're building infrastructure internally and building your maturity no matter what you decide to do. Now, maybe that means you're looking at a really, really high wrap rate there, and you're not going to be competitive. You're hitting trigger rates. Then just see if you win, and then don't win.
Hiring and outsourcing, though, is still a layer of oversight that not everyone's equipped for, honest. And the more that I meet SMEs, the more that I know that
Lisa has to deal with our consultants.
Then I'm hiring in that case.
Right, exactly.
Right? Lisa's really holding the line on my favorite point in this particular topic of the when am I ready to prime, which is it's not always prime all the time. I say this in my daily life. My day job.
It's not always prime time?
It's not always prime time. Sometimes it's sub time. And that's okay. And that's the thing I think we tend to see happen a lot as small businesses approach the mid-tier. We all know that classic formula of, replacing your socioeconomic set-asides with total small business, replacing those with full and open contracts, and then being ready to graduate and successful. Everyone does it 100% of the time. It's not true. It's not true. It's not real. There is no candy mountain. As I've gone on record in a shred in the past and said there is no candy mountain. There isn't a candy mountain. There's a valley
of death.
There is a valley of death. And so I always like to give the reminder when we're talking about this, that when we say, when are you ready for prime time? I don't mean all the time. It's not always prime time. There is not a single company out there, and do not let McKinsey tell you it is them, because it is not. And I can show you proof that primes all the time.
Okay.
There are a lot of newly graduated small business owners who tell their BD teams, we don't subcontract anymore. And I personally think that is taking your canteen on day 3, standing in the valley of death and dumping it out in front of your entire team.
Very short-sighted.
Yeah, it's just me. I always like to point out that making the decision to prime one contract does not lock you into making the decision to prime all of your contracts. In fact, it shouldn't.
Right. And because you need to diversify the opportunity there, and you need to make sure that you have a healthy pipeline. And I had said something in the secondary point about once you have growth, then you have to sustain it, because you need to backfill whatever contracts that you have. And sometimes it's damning to be like, okay, we're $100 million company. That means we need $1.5 billion in the pipeline, because when you do
it's
play
daunting.
Some of the numbers games, so you have to be able to backfill that.
Awesome.
We're growing into the mid-tier, and that's for everyone. Active Resources is currently in the mid-tier space, having graduated recently, and working on building our small business community. So if you've got valuable things you want to bring to the table, please give me a call. That's my book advertisement.
I like it.
Overall. But it's a space that you have to already have the network. And that's the hard part, right? When you hit that, and sometimes you hit it overnight. Active Resources was very, very small 4 years ago, right? And it is not small anymore. We hit it big, we found the right stuff, we had successful growth, delivered with excellence, and made our customers happy, and that's where we are. But when you get to that mid-tier space and you don't have that community, it gets to be hard to build that community. So no matter how big you are, make sure that there's a business smaller than you that you're helping along the way. right? And you could be two people, find a sole proprietorship, and continue to build that partnership and look up to the bigs and look down to the smalls and have that as part of your DNA because you can't live without it down the road.
I love
There's
that.
enough business for everybody.
It's not
Enough.
pie. Yeah, it's not pie. There's plenty to go around. As we said earlier, in this very shred-isode, grab a shovel. There's a lot of work to do. But to Imogen's point, and this is the point I like to make all the time, and even wrote in my notes and didn't say it, so thank you, Imogen. As it's not prime time all the time, it is also not large prime all the time. There is this sort of notion that when you're talking about primes, you're talking about large businesses, and you're not always. My pro tip for small businesses, especially brand new small businesses, new entrants to the space, is to seek out your more mature small businesses in this space. You can do that on USA Spending. There's a ton of drill downs you can do and use your judgment to see who's mature in your space and build relationships with them because, as Imogen just pointed out, once they graduate, they need a small business community. They are now being held to small business subcontracting goals that are not small.
Or to take over their work, right?
Mhm.
So that can take over the work where you can
Those
do an
88
over
flips.
under. Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Business, man.
Business,
Business.
business phone,
Business.
Yeah.
Business.
This is the fourth time Amber and I have degenerated into this in 2 days. Yes.
Business and industry.
So with 4 minutes left in today's shred, I want to double check with our audience to see if there are any additional questions, comments, anything anybody wants to share. And while we do that, open up the space for the panel to wrap us up. Anybody?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll kick it off or end it and conclude it on my sort of 2 cents here, which is a lot of people, even if you have sort of this front matter and you have the infrastructure and you have the understanding of the market, it's putting it into play can be wholly difficult for organizations. And I think it goes back to that idea of understanding what you're getting into and just being aware, being privy to the material that's out there about some of these concepts, because it's very hard to get a sense of entirety of GovCon, no matter where you go. And so, people, it's like, I got to get on the GSA schedule. Okay, why do you have to get on the GSA schedule? Just be intentional with what you're doing and make sure that you're not just chasing what you think you're supposed to be chasing, that you have sort of a strategic underpinning to every decision that you make.
Would you say, Lisa, that you should bid with intent?
Yes, I would.
I feel like I've heard that somewhere before.
I wonder if it was
The very savvy tagline. I don't know where it came from.
I think it was like a third tier tagline for the Pulse. I love that we're pulling it back around. We'll call it BD without the BS. We'll stay with that one.
It's my favorite one. I have that sticker on my laptop even.
I agree. Bid with a tent, and then when you win, you can afford a building to move into.
Yeah.
Get out of the tent. Oh, it's not bid with a tent? Okay.
Shh. All right.
Boo, boo.
I'll see myself out.
And my entire point just left my brain. I'd like to thank Imogen for that once again. Just making Liz lose her train of thought since 1996. Over there. But with all of that said, I think, for me, the key takeaways are number one, this is a big market. This is a customer that buys IT services in the form of DevSecOps and platforms and COTS software products, but also pencils and toilet seats and Zoom and Boom weapons and surveillance.
The 5 love language books. That's something that was recently bought.
Yeah. I mean, literally everything. I did a great animated YouTube video out there somewhere in the ether that Imogen and I did many years ago about the world's largest customers.
Oh my gosh, I need to look into that. I was going to say, we did one last year, I think, on funny things that the
like
government
2019 shutdown-ish.
I'm excited. I'm going to go look for this one.
But keeping in mind that you're dealing with your world's largest customer, it's why you hear people like Lisa, me, Imogen, Amber say the words, "it depends" so often, because it does, unfortunately. We do have one rule book for all of it, but keeping in mind that those rules are built for everything. just keep in mind it does depend, and reach out to people like us who you see on things like this with your questions, because we're usually pretty happy to answer them. Imogen, you want to take us home?
Sure. Most government employees are not there for the money. Most people that work inside government are not there for the money. Some of them are there, sure, people say for easy, but it's not that easy, right? A lot of them are there because of what they're doing, because they believe in what they're doing. The same holds for government contracting. If you're in this business to get rich, you might get rich, but it's gonna take all your hair off like it did to me. It's one of the hardest places to do business. It takes the most administrivia. It takes the most fight. The proposals and bids are just super hard. You are just redoing it over and over again, right? It's always difficult. Find the mission you believe in. And it doesn't matter if you're scrubbing their floors, you're manning their gates, you're building their software, you're driving it home and doing the mission for them. You're going to have a better time doing it when you're doing what you believe in. And you're going to have a lot easier time sticking on the ethical side of this business, because there's a big not ethical side of this business sometimes when you look deep enough, right? And people that are doing this for the wrong reasons. So I'd suggest that's where you look. And when you need to build that resilience again, and when you're really tired and you need to keep going, you can look at what you're doing for a living and believe in it. And that's why I still do this stuff.
I don't think you have to go very deep. It's this movie called War Dogs, if you all haven't seen it.
I like that you just here it is. So thank you all for having this great chat with me today. As always, it is a pleasure. For those of you who I have not met who are on the call, it's been lovely chatting adjacent to you. It's been a new Shred experience for us. We normally have a live audience in a room, but would love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to reach out if you've got any feedback, and hopefully we will see you at the next one. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Cheers. Thanks all.
Bye.